The air was cold. That's the first thing I remember, the kind of sharp, late October cold that feels good when you're running. It bites at your lungs and makes you feel alive. My routine is always the same. Out the door at 11:30 p.m. when the streets of my quiet suburb have finally given up for the day. Just me, my playlist, and the rhythmic slap of my running shoes on the pavement. It's my church, my therapy, or it was. I was on the final leg about a mile from home when I first heard it. It wasn't the sound itself, but the break in the pattern. My world for 45 minutes had been a perfect loop of my own breathing and the beat in my ears. This was something else. A scuff, a scrape, footsteps that weren't mine. I pulled out an earbud annoyed, probably just another late-night dog walker, but the sound that filled the silence was off. The rhythm was all wrong. It was a frantic, shuffling gait, punctuated by heavy, wet-sounding breaths. It was getting closer, fast. A jolt of pure animal adrenaline shot through me. I didn't even make a conscious decision to run, my body just took over. I pushed my pace, my heart hammering against my ribs not from exertion, but from a primal terror I hadn't felt since I was a kid afraid of the dark. I risked a glance over my shoulder. In the dim glow of a distant streetlight I saw a shape. A man, I think, tall but hunched, moving with a jerky, unnatural speed that didn't seem humanly possible. I couldn't see a face, just a lurching, relentless silhouette closing the distance. Panic clawed at my throat, my lungs burned. He wasn't just running, he was hunting. I veered off the main road, my mind screaming, and plunged into a narrow service alley between a closed-down laundromat and a bakery. It was a dead end. God, what an idiot, I was trapped. My eyes darted around wildly, searching for anything, a dumpster to hide behind, a fence to climb. And then I saw it. A plain white work van parked against the brick wall. Its side door was slightly ajar, a dark sliver of hope. I didn't think, I couldn't. I threw myself at the door, slid it open just enough to squeeze through, and pulled it shut behind me. The heavy thump echoed in the sudden, suffocating darkness. I held my breath, listening. The shuffling footsteps stormed past the mouth of the alley, followed by that awful, ragged breathing. They slowed, paused, and then, thank God, they faded away into the night. I was safe. I was hiding in a stranger's van, shaking uncontrollably, but I was safe, or so I thought. I stayed there for what felt like an eternity, curled up on the cold, corrugated metal floor, trying to get my breathing back to normal. The van smelled of stale coffee, sawdust, and something vaguely chemical. My initial wave of relief was slowly being replaced by the awkward reality of my situation. I was trespassing. I needed to get out before the owner came back. My heart was still doing a frantic tap dance against my ribs, but the immediate threat seemed to have passed. I told myself to count to 60, then I'd peek outside. The silence in the van was absolute, a stark contrast to the chaos of the last few minutes. It was in that deep silence that I heard it, a sound. It was faint, so faint I thought I was imagining it at first. A soft, muffled whimper from the back of the van. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing up again. My mind instantly leaped to the worst conclusion. The man who chased me, he wasn't alone. His partner was in here, waiting. I held my breath, straining my ears, praying I was wrong. But there it was again, a little more distinct this time. It was a desperate, guttural sound, like someone trying to scream through a gag. It was a sound of pure misery. My hand was shaking so violently I could barely operate my phone. I fumbled it out of my pocket, the screen's sudden brightness blinding me for a second. I swiped up, found the flashlight icon, and tapped it. A powerful white beam cut through the darkness. I aimed it towards the back of the van, my hand trembling, making the light dance erratically. The beam swept over toolboxes, coiled ropes, and stacks of flattened cardboard boxes. Then it landed on him. He was tied to an old wooden dining chair that had been bolted to the floor. His arms were wrenched behind him, his ankles bound to the chair legs with thick silver duct tape. More tape was wrapped around his head, covering his mouth completely. He was a man, maybe in his 40s, with thinning hair and a cheap polo shirt, but his eyes, God, his eyes. When the light hit them, they widened in a way I will never, ever forget. They were screaming, they were pleading, begging, shrieking with a terror that made my own recent panic feel like a mild case of nerves. He was looking right at me, and in his eyes, I saw a man who knew he was about to die. My brain just stopped. It was like a circuit breaker had flipped. The world narrowed to the beam of my flashlight, the man's terrified eyes and the roaring in my own ears. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. This was the kind of thing you saw in movies, not what you stumbled into on your nightly run in a boring suburban town. My first instinct, the one that screamed loudest in the chaos of my thoughts, was to call 911. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button on my phone. I had to report this. I had to get this man help. But something held me back. A cold, slithering dread that had nothing to do with the man who chased me and everything to do with the sheer impossibility of this situation. My gaze, still guided by the shaky beam of my phone, drifted away from the captive. It fell on the passenger side sun visor, which was flipped down. Tucked behind the elastic band was a folded, grimy piece of paper. It looked like a photocopy of the vehicle's registration. My light lingered on it, I don't know why. Maybe my brain was just desperately looking for something, anything, to make sense of. I saw the make, the model, of Ford Transit, and then I saw the license plate number. LKR7B49. The letters and numbers burned themselves into my retinas. A cold sweat, entirely different from the one I'd worked up running, broke out across my entire body. My stomach dropped. I knew that number. I knew that number. My hand, now shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone, navigated to my photo gallery. My thumb scrolled frantically, past pictures of my dog, past screenshots of recipes, past a stupid selfie I took last week. I was praying I was wrong, praying for it. And then I found it, a photo I'd taken 3 days ago. It was a picture of a small, square piece of notepaper I'd found tucked inside my mailbox. It was clearly meant for me. On it, in messy, block capital letters, was a hand-scrawled message: "We know you like T.O. Run." And underneath the words, drawn with the same shaky hand, was a crude little sketch of a van. Below the sketch was a license plate number, LKR7B49. I stared at my phone screen, then back at the registration card. The numbers matched. The world tilted on its axis. This wasn't random. None of it was. The man chasing me, this van, this captive, it wasn't a crime I had stumbled upon. It was a stage. It was a trap. And I had just walked right into the center of it. I was the intended audience. The air in the van suddenly felt thick and unbreathable. Every rational thought evaporated, replaced by a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated paranoia. This was a setup. The chase was a performance designed to funnel me here into this specific van. The man in the chair wasn't just a random victim, he was a prop, a message. Was he even a real victim? The thought was ugly and immediate. Was he an actor? Was this whole thing an elaborate, sick play to mess with my head? The man in the chair started struggling again, his muffled whimpers growing more frantic. He was shaking his head, his eyes wide with what looked like genuine despair. But the seed of doubt was planted. What if his desperation was just part of the act? What if the moment I tried to be a hero, the man who chased me would slide the door open? What if this bound man suddenly ripped off his own tape and lunged at me? My mind was a pinball machine of terrifying possibilities. They knew I ran this route, they knew my schedule, they had access to my private mailbox. This wasn't some street crime. This was personal, targeted, and meticulously planned, and I had no idea why. I had no enemies. I worked a boring data entry job, I paid my taxes. I lived a quiet, invisible life. The man in the chair's eyes locked onto mine again. The look was changing. The initial shock and pleading were giving way to a new, horrifying emotion. Dawning disappointment. He had seen me. He had seen my phone light. He believed, for a glorious, hope-filled moment, that he was saved. And now he was watching that hope die as I just stood there, paralyzed by my own selfish terror. His muffled cries became more insistent, a desperate, animalistic sound that tore at what was left of my conscience. "Do something, help me, please." His eyes screamed the words his mouth couldn't form. And in that moment I made a choice. It wasn't a noble choice. It wasn't a brave choice. It was the choice of a cornered animal. My survival instinct, that primal selfish core of my being, screamed louder than his muffled pleas. It screamed that this was a trap, and the only way to survive a trap is not to play the game. I turned off my phone's flashlight, plunging us back into absolute darkness. His final, choked-off sound of despair was a physical blow. I didn't let myself hear it. I crawled silently, carefully to the side door. My hand found the handle. It felt cold, heavy with the weight of my decision. I took one last, shallow breath of the stale, chemical air. Then, without looking back, I slid the door open just enough to slip out, and I ran. I ran harder than I had when the man was chasing me. I ran from the van, from the man in the chair, from the reflection of the person I saw in his pleading eyes. I ran all the way home, locked the door, and didn't stop shaking for an hour. I don't know why I'm posting this. Maybe I'm just screaming into the void. Maybe I'm hoping one of you, a complete stranger, can tell me what the hell I'm supposed to do now, because I think I'm losing my mind. Everything I wrote above is true. It happened. It happened tonight. I'm sitting in my apartment, the door is locked, I've wedged a chair under the handle like they do in the movies. It feels stupid, but I don't know what else to do. Every creak of the floorboards in the apartment above me, every car that passes on the street below sounds like them. Coming for me, I keep seeing his eyes, the man in the van. The way they lit up when they saw my flashlight, and the way they just collapsed when I turned it off and left. I left him there. I ran away. I chose myself over him, and I don't know if I can live with that. But you have to understand, it was a trap. It had to be. The note in my mailbox, the chase, everything leading me to that exact spot, it was too perfect. If I had opened that door and yelled for help or tried to untie him, what would have happened next? Would the chaser have come back? Would the man in the chair have revealed he was part of it? It felt like one of those moral dilemmas from a philosophy class, except if you get it wrong, you die. So what do I do? I'm sitting here, phone in my hand, my thumb hovering over the 911 button. But what do I say? Hello, police. I was chased by a monster, so I hid in a van where I found a man tied to a chair who was part of a conspiracy against me that I know about because of a note I got, so I abandoned him and ran away. Can you please go check? They'll think I'm insane. They'll send a psych unit, not a SWAT team. And what if they go to the van and it's empty? What if it's not even there? Then I'm just the crazy guy who calls in fake reports. Or worse, what if they do find him and they find my fingerprints all over the door? How do I explain being there? How do I explain leaving a man to die? And the worst thought, the one that's eating me alive. What if this is exactly what they want? What if they wanted me to find him, to run, and to call the police? What if calling the cops is the final piece of their puzzle? It would put me on the map. It would confirm to them that their little message was received. I feel like I'm a pawn in a game where I don't even know the rules. Please, someone tell me what to do. Am I a monster for what I did, or am I just a survivor? Thanks for all the comments. I'm reading every single one. My hands are shaking too much to reply to you all individually. A lot of you are saying I should call the cops, that I have to, regardless of the risk. Others are saying I need to lay low, that I did the right thing. Honestly, it's not helping. My head is just spinning faster. I've been glued to the window for the last 2 hours, peering through a crack in the blinds. The street is empty, normal. That's what's so terrifying. It all looks so normal. Some of you are asking for more details about the chase, about the note. The note was on cheap lined paper torn from a spiral notebook. The handwriting was like a child's, but angry. The drawing of the van was just a box with wheels. I threw the original away. God, I'm so stupid, but the photo is crystal clear on my phone. The man chasing me, this is where it gets weird. The more I try to remember him, the fuzzier he gets. In the moment, he was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen, a monster, but now I can't recall a single feature. Was he tall, short? Was he wearing a hoodie, a jacket? It's all just a blur of motion and menace. My brain is protecting me, maybe, or maybe it's rewriting the memory. A few of you have brought up a possibility that I've been trying to push away. The idea that maybe some of this isn't real. That the stress of my job, the isolation, maybe it finally made something in my head snap. Did I really see a man in that van? Or was it just a pile of junk in the dark that my terrified mind shaped into a person? Was the note just a prank by some local kids, and the chase just a random encounter with a drunk or a homeless person that I blew up in my head? Did I connect two unrelated things because I was scared? I want to believe that. God, I want to believe that more than anything. It would mean I'm not a coward who left a man to die. It would mean I'm just sick. But then I look at the front door of my apartment. When I came in, I was so panicked I just slammed it and threw all the locks. I've been staring at it for the last 10 minutes. There are scratches around the keyhole, thin, silvery lines in the cheap brown paint. They look fresh. I've lived here for 3 years and I've never noticed them before. Are they new? Did someone try to get in here while I was out on my run? Or have they always been there and I'm just seeing them for the first time because I'm looking for threats everywhere? I don't know what's real anymore. The monster outside or the one my own mind might be creating. I decided you were right, the ones who said to call the police. The risk of being misunderstood was better than the certainty of doing nothing. I couldn't live with that, so I took a deep breath, unlocked my phone, and was about to dial. That's when I heard the knock, not a frantic, angry banging, a calm, polite knock, 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 the kind a neighbor makes when they come to borrow a cup of sugar. It was the most terrifying sound I've ever heard in my life. I froze, didn't breathe, my heart stopped. They were here, they knew I was going to call. Then a voice came through the door. Police department, sir, we had a call from one of your neighbors about a man running in the street looking distressed, just doing a welfare check. Is everything okay in there, Mr. Davies? They knew my name, my blood ran cold. How did they know my name? The neighbor wouldn't know it. I stumbled to the peephole, my legs like jelly. I saw two uniformed officers. They looked bored, professional. One was a woman with her hair in a tight bun, the other a man with a thick mustache. They looked completely, utterly normal. I undid the locks, my hands clumsy. The chair I'd wedged under the handle scraped loudly against the floor. I opened the door a crack. I'm fine, officers, I stammered. Just had a bit of a scare on my run. The policewoman gave me a patient, practiced smile. We get that a lot, just wanted to make sure you were safe. You looked like you'd seen a ghost. I stood there in the doorway, my mind a battlefield. This was my chance, my one chance. I could tell them everything. The chase, the note, the van, the man in the chair. It was all right there on the tip of my tongue. But as I opened my mouth to speak, my eyes drifted past the officer's shoulders down to the street below. And I saw it, parked directly across from my building under a flickering streetlight was the white van. It was just sitting there unassuming. Its back doors were closed, but not completely. One of them was slightly ajar, leaving a thin vertical sliver of perfect, impenetrable blackness, an unblinking eye in the dark. The world went silent. The officers were still looking at me, waiting. My gaze was fixed on the van. It was real, it was there, it had followed me home, or it had been waiting for me the whole time. The male officer followed my gaze. He squinted, then looked back at me, a hint of confusion on his face. "Sir," he asked, his voice pulling me out of my trance. "Are you all right?" "What are you looking at?"